Have you ever imagined what life would look like if you were born in prehistoric times? No alarm clocks, no jobs, no packed schedules, no feeling of having to immediately race against time the moment you open your eyes in the morning. The strange thing is that for almost all of human history, this was how people actually lived. They woke up when their bodies were fully rested. No one owned their time. No paychecks. No emails. No concept of weekdays or weekends. Meanwhile, modern humans today spend around 90,000 hours of their lives working. Nearly 1/3 of your entire waking existence is devoted to a job, and for many people, life slowly turns into a familiar cycle of waking up, working, feeling exhausted, then going to sleep only to repeat everything again the next day. So before the idea of work ever existed, what did ancient humans actually do all day? And why is it that the deeper we look into the lives of our ancestors, the more it feels like humanity may have sacrificed far more than we realize in order to create the modern world we live in today? Around the middle of the last century, researchers began living alongside some of the last remaining hunter-gatherer communities in the world, and what they discovered completely changed the way we imagine prehistoric life. These people were not spending every waking moment running from predators or desperately struggling to survive the way movies often portray. Adults only spent a few days each week hunting, gathering, and securing food. Most of the remaining time was devoted to resting, talking, caring for children, repairing tools, or sharing stories around the fire. What makes this even more fascinating is that the same pattern appeared in many different parts of the world, from Africa to South America to Australia. Communities living close to ancient human lifestyles all shared something in common. They had far more free time than modern humans do today. Meanwhile, most people in the modern world spend nearly their entire waking existence working. Some may argue that these are just a few unusual tribes that survived into the modern age, but the real evidence lies in the bones of our ancestors themselves. When archaeologists compared the skeletons of hunter-gatherers with those of the earliest farming societies, the differences became impossible to ignore. Early farmers were shorter, weaker, and carried far more signs of repetitive physical labor. In contrast, hunter-gatherers were healthier, stronger, and suffered significantly less bodily damage. And perhaps the strangest part of all is this: even in a life that seemed entirely centered around survival, they still found time to create art. And then archaeologists began discovering something that almost completely changed the way we see ancient humans. If prehistoric life was truly nothing more than a non-stop struggle for survival, then why did our ancestors spend so much time on art, music, and beauty inside ancient caves across Europe? Researchers discovered paintings tens of thousands of years old showing horses, lions, and rhinoceroses with remarkable depth and movement. These were not crude drawings. They required skill, emotion, and hours of focused work beneath flickering firelight in complete darkness. No one paid them to do it. It did not help them hunt more food, and yet they still created it. In Africa, shell bead necklaces were found far from the coastline, suggesting that someone once walked dozens of kilometers simply to gather shells and carefully drill tiny holes into them to create jewelry. Meanwhile, in Europe, researchers uncovered ancient flutes carved with incredible precision from bird bones, proving that humans understood music far earlier than we once believed. What makes this even more astonishing is that these discoveries appear all across the world. Jewelry, musical instruments, paintings, and beautifully crafted objects, far more elaborate than what survival alone required. And perhaps all of them are telling the same story. When humans are no longer forced to spend every moment merely trying to survive, we naturally begin to create, tell stories, and search for meaning deep within our nature. Humans were never meant to simply exist. We have always wanted to turn life into something more beautiful. Now imagine an ordinary morning, tens of thousands of years ago. You wake up with the sunrise beside a fire, still softly burning from the night before. No alarm clocks, no meetings, no feeling that you must immediately rush back into the endless machinery of life. People eat leftover food from the previous day while quietly talking together in the calmness of the morning. Sometimes a small group leaves to hunt or gather food, but they do not need to do it every day. If there is already enough food, the group may spend time repairing tools, weaving baskets, or simply resting, and once the hunt is over, most of the work of the day is already finished. Perhaps the biggest difference in that life was everything that came afterward. People sat together, played with children, shared stories, laughed, and spent hours simply being around one another. Because in that world, survival did not depend on productivity, it depended on human relationships and connection. Then the sun slowly disappeared beyond the horizon. The fire at the center of the camp began to glow brighter against the darkness. And perhaps this was the moment when the most deeply human side of humanity truly emerged. Studies of the last remaining hunter-gatherer communities show that during the day, conversations were mostly practical. People talked about animal tracks, food sources, weather, or small conflicts within the group. But once night fell and everyone gathered around the fire, something began to change. Most conversations were no longer about survival. They became stories. They spoke about how the world was created, spirits hidden within the forests, extraordinary ancestors, strange adventures and jokes that made the entire group burst into laughter beneath the darkness of the night. Perhaps this was where human culture was truly born. Religion, mythology, art, ideas about the past and the future. The kinds of thoughts that only appear when human beings feel safe enough to think beyond simply surviving until tomorrow. And even their sleep was very different from ours today. Before artificial light existed, humans did not sleep in one continuous block throughout the night the way we do now. They often slept in two separate phases. A first sleep lasting several hours, followed by a quiet waking period of 1 or 2 hours in complete darkness for reflection, conversation, or simply sitting beside the fire, before eventually returning to a second sleep that lasted until sunrise. So what did a full day of human life actually look like back then? Only a few hours were spent gathering food, repairing tools, or preparing for future hunts. A large portion of the remaining time was devoted to conversation, storytelling, playing with children, caring for one another, and simply slowing down within nature. They slept in two separate phases, rested more often, and experienced long stretches of time where they did nothing in particular at all. No self-optimization, no obsession with turning every minute into productivity, just existing as a human being without constantly needing to prove their worth. Then around 10,000 years ago, everything began to change. Humans learned how to plant seeds and domesticate animals. Agriculture appeared, and strangely enough, many researchers believe this was also the moment humanity stepped into a massive trap, because once you could produce more food, populations began to grow. More people meant more food was needed. And the more food humans produced, the more dependent they became on farming. Within only a few generations, there was almost no way back to the hunter-gatherer lifestyle. From that point on, labor became far more demanding, plowing land, planting crops, harvesting, protecting food supplies. The skeletons of the earliest farmers show that they worked harder, ate worse, and died younger than the hunter-gatherers who came before them. But populations kept growing, and over time, society gave birth to professions, social classes, laws, and eventually, the concept of work as we know it today. The idea that your time could be exchanged for resources by working for someone else. Today, modern humans spend around 90,000 hours of their lives working. Meanwhile, our ancestors may have spent far more time actually living. They did not wake up every morning feeling as though they were falling behind. They did not spend their entire existence chasing standards of success created by society. And perhaps the greatest difference of all was that they did not need to constantly prove they deserved to exist.